Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome, and well, zooming from wherever you are, that you're watching and listening to this transmission of teachings. As you know, we are going to do the prayers before we begin the teaching, which is to tune your mind in the refuge, the belief and affirmation in the teachings of the Buddha. Whatever you know so far, you have reason to believe, follow, and practice. And by doing this prayer, we are reaffirming and renewing, and therefore realizing of its truth, its benefit, its use, its profound effect in how we live and how we see things, how we process things, how we respond to things. We are far better by having this access to the teachings, particularly if you have had the good discipline to listen and reflect and again apply in your life. You would have seen amazing valid benefit and amazingly revitalizing your whole conscious ability, as if it's renewing your fitness and goodness to be, to understand, to have compassion, to be patient, to be understanding, to be non-reactive, and to have the ability to not react. A self-control. And subsequent benefit and realization of doing all the above. And have a profound ability to radiate compassion to those who are not able to, not react and not judge, not throw stones at them. For they too are struggling, particularly without the way before them. They're blind without the teachings. And so we have reason to listen not just for ourselves, but for the benefit of others, who we may be able to use as a range of compassion, range of understanding. As we otherwise are very selective to whom we are nice and kind and very, very mean and finite ability to be kind, which makes us miserable. If we can expand and improve our capacity to have the inclusiveness of others, like warranty, you wanted to include another 10 years. You want to include the warranty to not just you, but third party. Like car insurance. Refuge is insurance. So, with this understanding, let's do the prayers. Oyenda Buddha Dharma Sangha Aite Refuge Enlightenment Bhavacha Ajendala Ashare Buddha Vajruvi Enda Buddha Dharma Sangha Aite Enlightenment Bhavacha Ajendala Ashare Buddha Vajruvi Enda Buddha Dharma Sangha Aite Enlightenment Bhavacha Ajendala Ashare Buddha Vajruvi. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know apart from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, never. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they know apart from happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, never. May all beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that knows no suffering. May they dwell equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to the near and far. According to the intelligence and predisposition of the Yatanda Dharma Agrelo and Kama Ego. Welcome everyone, and trying to understand a collection of sutra that are collectively called Sutra of Wise and Foolish. But that's just a collective name of many sutras. None of the sutras are themselves called wise and foolish. Each of the sutras are named after a person or a place or what happened. But each of those sutras you will discourse. Sutra means discourse. Means there is a choice, there is a morale of the story will show you how foolish a person can be, at the same time how wise we could be. It's very much a choice that we too have in every situation in life, whether we're going to lean onto the wisdom or compassion, or whether we're going to lean into the foolish and the ruthlessness, righteousness, and reactive, punitive will. We always think it's right to react, and because we think we have right, and we are often correct, and so we justify. But only a few moments later, not maybe it doesn't take hours, we realize how foolish that was. But if you don't have any wisdom, it'd take ages. You never realize it was foolish. You still think, I was right, he wronged me, he wronged me, he wronged me. Yes, he's the same person who wronged me. And that's how we stay foolish. But once you have heard many sutras like this, then you'll be quick to correct your wrong. And you don't want to stay foolish. And you will forgive others, you will be gentle with others. So therefore this collective name for this sutra is very universally appealing to people. So we have gone through quite a few stories already. Today we're going to starting on the chapter 18, the householder without organs. Upon a certain occasion, the enlightened one was residing in the city of Shravasti, at the Jetavana monastery in Anathapindika's park, teaching the Dharma to great assembly monks. So this one start without the traditional "thus I've heard," but it is "thus I've heard," even though it's not specifically there. So reason it doesn't have "thus I've heard" indicate that this is an extraction from a larger body of the sutras. But it doesn't really have to have a "thus I've heard," because it is actually like many teachings extracted from larger body of the sutras. It doesn't start with the "thus I've heard," but it comes. The main teaching is presented. Usually, they present the 5 factors. The 5 factors are the place, and the time, and the audience, and then the teaching and the teacher. So here the teacher is a Buddha, the place is Sravasti, and we'll soon find out who was the audience and what was the teaching, and time, it says at a certain time. They don't say on the 7th of September 2400 BC. you could have that, but we know that how the title, it says householder without organs, so sometimes the title give you some idea but not whole thing. That's why we need to. So what organ is he missing? So it was at the fully enlightened Shakyamuni Buddha was residing in the city of Shravasti. This city, Shravasti, was one of the 6 main cities of ancient India. Yeah? Today, Shravasti, most people say, where is it? That most people don't know. It's not even a capital city of one of the states of India today. But in the old days, it was one of the most celebrated cities of northwestern India. But those days, there was not even a concept of India, They were all made out of hundreds of principalities. And Shravasti was the city of the king Prasenajit, who was contemporary of the Buddha. And it was a very wealthy city. When you go there today, it's a very agricultural land today. It's the northwest of Nepal, and west of Nepal rather, and southeast of Delhi, if you really. And the nearest big city today is Agra and Lucknow. The word Shravasti, word Shra, comes from listening, and it's the place of listening. So I don't know whether the name was coined after many people heard the Buddha teach there so long, but I wouldn't be wrong if it may not be wrong to think it is, because the word Shravasti always has lots of people went to listen to the Dharma. Jetavana monastery is the famous Jetavana monastery. When you today go to Shravasti city, there's no Shravasti city. There's only ruins of the Jetavana monastery. That was bought and sponsored by Anathapindika. Anathapindika is the famous Buddhist lay benefactor who himself, while being a lay benefactor, he became an arhat. So, Anathapindika Park, teaching the Dharma to great assembly monks, of course, wherever Buddha was. Even though he started with the 5 reluctant disciples, but later on he was often surrounded by hundreds of assembly monks. When they say great assembly, the great is usually have 2 qualities. Great in number is usually no less than 5,000. Great in quality was not only they were great in number, but many of them have realized arhats, different levels of arhathood. Stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arhathood. So there was no ordinary people who are only attending occasionally, teaching when they're free. These are the totally dedicated renunciate, who by merely hearing the Buddha or meeting once completely have no hesitation, no doubt but to become a mendicant. So they are great in terms of their commitment, their discipline, their knowledge, their discipline, their realization, only second to the Buddha. Great assembly of monks. They don't mention nuns, but I'm sure there were nuns, But monks is a generic term for renunciate. In those days, they never wrote for anyone but one gender, so they always talk about monks. They never included women, but I'm pretty sure. Because no text doesn't mention, but there's always nuns. There were nuns, They may not be fully ordained nuns, because it took a while for the Buddha to make up his mind to ordain women. But there were a lot of Sramanerikas, the female novices. And actually, among spiritual devotees, there are actually more females who are devotees in most communities. And sure, the men are there, but either as monastic or as providers. Sometimes laymen don't quite participate as actively as lay women do. There are very many notable lay women who became devotees of the Buddha, but not that many lay devotees, unlike Anathapindika. Anyway. At that time, they lived in that country. That country, which country? Saravasti? Saravasti is not a country. So at that time, there are many ancient Indian countries. So let's not get into it. And a wealthy householder who possessed gold, silver. They never say they have Mercedes cars, they have yacht. In those days, they talk about gold, silver, cows. Maybe they will count the cows. Gold, silver, 7 kinds of precious jewels, yes, elephants, horses, see, I told you, cattle, sheep, men, women, slaves. If you have many slaves, you're wealthy. Which is quite an awful thing in these days. He has 7 slaves, people would think it's terrible. who work for him, and storehouses filled with goods. This householder had 5 lovely, intelligent daughters, but no son. Yeah, that's the kind of interesting story. So he's struggling to have a son. And maybe the story now suggests maybe he will have a son with an organ. So this is the story. At the time when the householder's wife was pregnant, the householder died. The wife was already pregnant. The husband died. So this sort of thing happens karmically. You work so hard to get a family together, and then when your young child is about to be born, one of the parents dies. This is the story about Dharma. This is about story about how life of people are often affected by loss of someone. At that time, according to the laws of that country, if a man died leaving no male heir, it was the right of the king to take the dead man's property. Maybe it's also today. If you're not careful, if you don't have a will, it will go to the state. The king now sent an official to evaluate and confiscate all the householder's possessions. The daughters thought as follows: "It is impossible to know whether it is a boy or a girl in our mother's womb. If a girl is born, the king will, without question, take all our property. But if a son is born, the property will belong to him." The girls are actually thinking, whether their brother will inherit it. Yeah. Thereupon they went to the king and said, "Your Majesty, since our father died without a male heir, it is quite right for you to take our property, so poor thing. But our mother is now pregnant. If a girl is born, we lose the property, of course. But if a son is born, will not be the property. If a son is born, will not the property be his?" The king Prasenajit, King Prasenajit is a contemporary Buddha, being a just man who ruled according to the Dharma, agreed that this would be so. Soon after, when the 9 months had passed, fulfilled, a son was born, exactly, whose body, although complete with male organs, was without eye, ear, nose, tongue, hands, or feet. He was named Manjipila. You could have child born with lots of deformities, but not to this extent. I mean, what must be like to be a child that doesn't have eyes, that doesn't have ears, nose, tongue, hands, and feet? Maybe headless, limbless. The girls reported this to the king, and who considered the case and thought, if the one is born with eyes, ears, nose, tongue, hands, feet, so on, but without a male organ, he has no right to the property. But if he is born with a male organ intact, even though he is without the other organ, his father's property belongs to him. Therefore he told the girl, your father's property belongs to you and your baby brother. Thereupon they took the possession of the property. At that time, the eldest daughter was married to a man of the same caste. When she was taken to his household, she prepared his seat, made his bed, bowed to him, prepared fine food, and offered to him, went out to meet him, and saw to it that all the men and women servants respected, honor him in the proper manner. The husband once said to her, when a man and woman marry, there's usually not all this respect. Why is it that you honor me like this? His wife explained to him all that had happened and concluded and saying, if only one has a male organ, the king cannot take one's property. This is the reason that I honor you. When the householder heard wife's words, he was astonished. Taking her, he went to the Buddha and asked, Lord, why was the householder's son born without organs? Why did he inherit his father's wealth? So that's the story. Nobody knows. The Buddha will explain. Enlightened ones replied, householder, it is well that you have asked this. I shall explain the reason. Listen attentively to bear it well in mind. The householder said, Lord, I shall listen. Deign to tell me, I beseech you. The Buddha said, in times long past, there lived a householder who had 2 sons. One's name was Dana, other's name was Shila. From earliest age, these 2 brothers were of good character, modest, and spoke the truth. They rejoiced in giving, supported the poverty-stricken beggars, and people respected and praised them. King made the eldest brother a magistrate, and his functions were those of a king's minister. At that time, according to the king's law, when people loaned property to each other, they first were obliged to show it to a magistrate. Upon a certain occasion, a merchant who was going to sea requested the son named Dana to lend him money and promised him to repay when he returned. Taking his son to a witness, he went to his elder brother, the magistrate, and said to him, Brother, this merchant is borrowing money from me and will repay me. If he is at sea, I should die. When the money is repaid, it should be given to this young man, son of mine. To this elder brother agreed. Not long after, the Dana died. When the merchant had gone to the sea, his ship was struck by a storm, capsized, and he alone of the crew were able to reach the shore by holding onto a piece of wood. When he arrived home alone, the son, knowing that the merchant had come alone and could not repay his father's money, made no claims. Again, the merchant borrowed and went to sea, and this time obtained many precious gems. Arriving home, he thought, until now the son of the householder has not demanded his money. Being young, he probably does not know that he borrowed from his father. I shall find out. Donning an expensive silk robe and mounting a fine horse, he rode to the merchant's guild. When the son of the householder saw him attired in costly silks and riding a fine horse, he thought, the merchant has obtained great wealth. Now I shall get my money from him and send a go-between requesting the payment. The merchant thought, I did indeed borrow a certain sum of the householder, but right now I cannot repay it. I shall employ a ruse. Taking a precious jewel, he went to the wife of the magistrate and said, Madam, deign to hear me. Formerly I borrowed a small sum from the householder Dana. When his son comes to the magistrate to demand payment, tell him that I should say that he knows nothing about it. This will be the great kindness to me, and to recompense you, I offer you a jewel which is valued at 10,000 ounces of silver. The woman replied, "My husband is very honest and quite incapable of telling a falsehood. Nevertheless, I shall do you as you say," and accepts the jewel. That night, when the master of the house came home and his wife told him what the merchant had done, the magistrate was horrified and exclaimed, "When I think of what righteousness is, I am ashamed. King made me magistrate because I have never lied. If I were to lie now, I should never betray the law." The next day the merchant came again, and the woman told him what her husband had said and returned the jewel to him. The merchant then offered her a jewel with 300,000 ounces of the silver and said, "Certainly there could be nothing wrong with taking such a jewel just to say a few words about so trifling a matter. It is not the same as taking a bribe, and I offer it just to thank you." The woman, coveting the jewel, agreed and promised to do what the merchant asked. That night, when the master came home, his wife again told him what had taken place. The magistrate said, "It was because I never lied that I was appointed magistrate. If I lie now, no one will ever believe me in this lifetime, and in the next I will undergo sufferings of countless eons." The householder had a baby boy who was still at the toddler's stage. The householder's wife said to him, "Even since we have been married, you have never heard me ask for even a small favor. If you refuse this favor I now ask, I shall kill both the child and myself." When the magistrate heard this, he thought, I'm like a man in prison who will never be released and cannot escape. This is my only son. If he dies, I will have no heir. But if I do what my wife demands, I will be mistrusted by everyone in the world, and the future lives will experience endless suffering. Against his will, he agreed with his wife's request. The wife rejoiced greatly and told the merchant, "I have done as you ask. When action is brought against you, do whatever you wish." The merchant was delighted, returned to his home, caparisoned an elephant, put on a jeweled robe, and wrote to the merchant's guild. When the son of the householder saw him, he rejoiced, believing that now the merchant had become wealthy, he would repay what he had borrowed. Approaching him, he said, "Ah, merchant, you remember the money that you borrowed from my father. Please repay me now." The merchant feigned a surprise. "I know nothing about any money borrowed from you." The boy said, "The magistrate know that in such and such month of such and such year you borrowed from my father. Why do you try to make difficulties?" The merchant said, "I know nothing of borrowing anything from you. If you have proof, let us go to the magistrate." Together they went to the magistrate. The boy said to his uncle, "Formerly this man borrowed from my father. You, uncle, know this, but this man pretends to know nothing about it." The uncle said, "I have no knowledge of this." The nephew, in astonishment, said, "You yourself with your own hands evaluated the money, and now you say you know nothing about it." The uncle replied, "I have never heard of such a thing." In anger, the boy reproached his uncle, and you are called a righteous man, a magistrate of a king, praised by all the people as an honest man. You tell a hideous lie like this to your own nephew. If you deceive other people, you have deceived me. The truth will become known concerning you. The enlightened one then said, "Householder, who do you think was that magistrate? You should know that it was none other than the child who was born with the organs." Because of his lie, the magistrate was reborn in the great hell, underwent various kinds of torture. delivered from the great hell, he was born in a body with organs 500 times. Because he had been charitable, he was born as a man of wealth, although without organs. The fruit of his sin and virtue never become exhausted. All of you, therefore, endeavor to guard acts of body, speech, mind, and cut off evil deeds. The great assembly, having heard the word of the Buddha, believed. Some attained from the first to the fourth fruits. These are the 4 stages of the arhathood. Some brought forth a mind of supreme enlightenment. In faith, they rejoiced greatly. So you can see now this story is the incontrovertibility of law of karma. Whatever you create, you will experience exactly similar. Not just once, 500 times. Yeah, so 500 times he will be reborn like that. So this is the counsel, this is the teaching, is how one should think carefully before making any major acts, or words, or deeds. Before you say things, before you do things, before you even think things. Because these are mainly acts of the body and acts of speech, because telling a lie and doing all of that, of course, there are similar consequences, the act of mind. So quite a lot of the karmic consequences of dishonesty will bring many deformities in one's physical body, even though one is born as a child in a very wealthy family. Because of him having a male organ, he inherited all of that. But he has no ability to see them with his eyes. He has no ability to taste them with his mouth. He cannot enjoy anything. So he's just completely. There are lots of people born in many wealthy places, but completely decapacitated by severe deformities. At the same time, there are lots of people who are born with incredible, in a very nice family. The child is healthy, and he or she is brought up with great kindness and care. And whatever they do, they success, they're healthy, they prosper, they succeed in their career. All these things may look like a great effort of parent and so on, but have the child not have inherited past karma, if he not practiced generosity in past lives, he would not have the merit to be born in a wealthy family, let alone being treated very kindly. Even though a parent and a sister who will treat their only brother, who's only organless brother, very well, but he has none of the organs to enjoy, to see their sisters. So this is the incontrovertibility of law of cause and effect. The foolish will not believe in these karma things. They say, oh, this is rubbish, this is karma, this is... quite a lot of people say that. I can't believe this karma thing. Yeah. There's a little daunting for most people to believe in all nitty-gritty details. Some people have naturally believed in it because Buddha said so, you know. They don't care to doubt. They don't waste any time in thinking it's not accurate. And this enables us also to look back at our own predicament. Some situation in life we have rejected. Why I'm like this? And sort of thing, as if not, is they are dint of our parents, or because they didn't do this, or because I wasn't loved as much as my sister. All that kind of, lots of people have incredible foolish views about their predicament. It's not the parent who are biased, but it's just one's own karma in the past has been very different, because most people have no way of remembering the past, and therefore they couldn't believe. They lay blame to the parents for not being equally loving to him or her, and there's amazing sibling rivalry or jealousy in lots of big families. No matter how much the parent try to be kind equally, but the children never see them, because they're so foolish. So the Sutra of Wise Foolish is pointing us, don't be foolish, thinking it's the dint of others. It's the result of one's own past actions. One may not remember it, but it doesn't mean that one doesn't remember things didn't happen. If you don't remember where you were born, doesn't mean you weren't born. So you were still born, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So therefore, most people don't have a memory, and this is not just few people have no memory. Others have. Most people forget most of the good things. They also forget all the bad things they did. They forget all the good things their parent did. So foolish. They only tend to remember and amplify few things that parents may have blundered or not quite done right, because they are human beings. They are sentient. They're deluded, and then they harshly judge them. So we should not be foolish, but we should humbly accept the situation as having their own concordant causes to bring the kind of experiences, because karma. The law of causality is that if you sow the seed of radish, you will reap radish, and not onion, and vice versa. So even say your dad or mom did seem to discriminate against a little bit, but that's because you must have done much more severe than that to them in the past life. That's exactly the case. This is called experiential result. Concordant experiential result. Not only that, you will have no doubt certain habits, concordant habitual conduct. You or yourself also tend to do that to others, unhesitatingly. But when someone does it, then we cannot accept it. So there are lots of concordant experience, concordant habit, and concordant environment, concordant behaviors. So there's a lot of teaching there. It's not so much of Dana and his family's life, and the five sisters. And maybe one of you is the only son who, instead of being born with her organs, you have all the organs intact. Your most favorite child in the family. And you feel so spoiled, but you don't realize that if you're not careful, that being spoiled and loved by everyone may not last very long. And how about your other five sisters, who are not as treated as nicely as you are? So there's a lot of people make very, very foolish choices in their thoughts, in their formation of the opinions, in their perceptions, in their narratives. So here, by listening to this story from Sutra, Wise and Foolish, we try to recognize the foolish thoughts and try to rescind them, try to stop them from forming, try to unsubscribe those views. Yeah. Quickly, you wouldn't believe how quickly that'll stop your misery and pour me, because you are wise enough to heed to this story. This is why we are reading the sutras. We are listening to the sutras. Buddha himself says this sutra must be read, it must be listened, it must be copied, it must be told, it must be remembered, it must be explained, because then it will explain lots of mysteries, things that you haven't understood about your life. And that's why the sutras are, thus I've heard. When you listen to the story, you would have heard something that you never thought was worthy of listening to, because that version you never wanted to move to. You only have your own one version of the story, however jaundiced that was by your selfishness and ungratefulness and anger or jealousy or arrogance, whatever the case might be. And then you realize you learn how to unsubscribe to that, because it says that all of you therefore should endeavor to guard the acts of body, speech, and mind. Yeah. You should therefore learn to guard your thoughts. Usually we don't hesitate our thoughts. We think, it's my thought, it has to be the most important thought. Because can I have a say? We want to put our hands up, and if we want people to listen to our version of the say, that will be speech, soon. But the wise ones first check your own thoughts, the veracity, usefulness, the benefit, whether it sees the point far enough or not. So, therefore, the benefit of listening to the story like this, that we should therefore have the ability to guard our thoughts and cut off the thought becoming speech and deeds, those that are unacceptable, negative, desire, greed, anger, jealousy, selfishness, plotted thoughts. But most people don't have such cognizance to see the negative thoughts as negative, because they're not wise enough to have heard stories like this. They only hear stories from their own biased friends, and they tell you, and they listen, and then you just... they never listen to stories that Buddha explained. And many people since then, 2,500 years ago, have copied, remember every word, and wrote it on palm leaves with their own handmade ink, and preserved them from wind and dust and weather and nature, kept them in well-covered clothes and very, very sheltered, and passed it from the father to son, generation to generation, as the most worthy than money. Remember, those days money wasn't even heard. It was things. So those who gave ink, those who gave paper, those who hired the subscribers, they were the treasured artisans, subscribers they call it. Lipikaras. They were professional sort of writers. Not writing for stories of other people, but write everything what the people said and heard. And these, the sutras, sutra means threads. Threads of words, of stories that are strung together with very many pearls of wisdom. Sutta means string. It's many thread of string of thoughts that were woven together in this kind of story, and then was passed from one generation to another, and was necessarily read. Otherwise, you can't say, "Thus I've heard." They don't say, "Thus I've read." There always was heard knowledge in the past. But by putting the time and energy to listen to the elders, or who have heard, has a lot of requirement. I suppose it develops some sense of friendship and respect, like no other things that people. These days, in a modern education, the listening to the lecturers has become less of a necessity, because you can listen on something, but don't attend in person, and therefore there's not a lot of appreciation for the knowledge, source of the knowledge, or the transmitter of the knowledge. So maybe that's what the whole thing, the respect to the knowledge, has been preserved in the sutra chanting. Sutra chanting is an annual event in Theravada Buddhist countries. They not only it's an annual event, they also choose a specific time, a specific location that many can come, and all the senior staviras and mahastaviras, ordained monks who have been not just monks but also 10 years or 20 years senior, they all take turn to read the sutra, and everyone is listening, They don't chant the sutra by whole assembly, and they have one senior master Vira. He himself is Shravaka. Shravaka is one who is a teller of what he heard. Shra means heard, Vaka means teller. He's a teller of what he heard. And thank goodness, these days we are reading from the, because it occurred in around 1st century AD that they may not have people with art of non-forgetfulness who remember words for words. So because when the monks, senior monks in those days, like people like Ananda, when they said the story, they said everything from memory. They have reached a certain level art of non-forgetfulness as a great quality of arhathood. They have the ability to not forget everything, But then they knew that as time degenerates and people become more materialistic and more focused on me and things rather than the wisdom and the sake of the humanity, then they committed the words into writing, palm leaves, but still, even in a good tradition where they have kept the sutra chanting tradition, even though there are books that literally can read, like each of you can read this too on your own. But we are all gathered here because we try to honor the age-old lineage of tellers and readers. Because the living ambience of a tradition and faith and devotion of the teller is more manifestly than you read yourself a sutra in your living room. We sit together, but take refuge in the triple gym. We generate a good motivation to listen and read and reflect for the benefit of all sentient beings together as a formal session. And all of these things has many multiple times more meritorious than you reading a book over a couple of hours. So what? Most of the things we read are fictions, which has little or no meaning really, just to time pass. And some of them have some morals. I'm not saying they aren't. But who is the author of the stories that has vision and understanding, wisdom that stories like this can be told in order to implant a great influence in people's mind over their choices of the language of thoughts and deeds thereafter in their every life, in every situation. Wait until you really hear a story that has made you to think twice before you choose your thoughts, opinions, and let alone speak about it and let alone act on its behalf. If you are made more readily compassionate and tolerant in your thoughts and words and deeds, it's because you've heard something wise to do that. Okay, now we will move to the next chapter. That's chapter 19. This story is a beggar woman gives her clothing. So this is also, titles are really useful. Usually almost it tells half the story. When you see the box of medicine, when you see the name of the medicine, then you know what the medicine is. Like that, the titles usually tells what the content is. The beggar woman. Although she is a beggar, but she gives her own clothing to others. You don't need to be wealthy to give. People give what they don't need, But the beggar woman needs her clothing to put her on cover back, but yet she gives to somebody. So that alone says the wise choice. Wise choices are not necessarily made by wise people. You might be beggar, you might be poor, you might be condemned, but still you can make a good choice. Once upon a time, the Lord was residing in Sravasti in Jetavana monastery in another Pindakat park, teaching the Dharma to a great assembly monks. So both of these two stories starts the same, without thus I've heard. And most of the story happens in none other than in Jetavana park, because Buddha spent 25 years living there. And if he, it's more than 50% of time he spent in ministry of teaching. 45 years since he attained enlightenment until he passed away. That's 45 years. If he spent 25 years in Sravasti, basically 55% of the time Buddha was teaching, he did so in Sravasti. Yet people don't think Sravasti is a place where Buddha taught. They think Sravasti is some place where Buddha conquered his rivals or something. Anyway, at that time, in that country, there was born to a wife of a house a child who was lovely and beautiful. So this talks about the girl's countenance and body. She was born really, really beautiful. Yeah. Because at birth the child had been wrapped in a soft white cloth, her parents, in astonishment, took her to a soothsayer. Because she was born with a cloth. Born with a cloth. Because she didn't get one. So they couldn't believe that she came with a cloth, The soothsayer examined the child and said, "This girl is endowed with great virtue," and named her Suchi. As the child grew, the cloth also grew in proportion. I thought, that sounds like skin to me. One layer of the skin. After the girl had grown and many sought her in marriage, her parents searched for gold and silver for her wedding ornaments. Seeing this girl asked, "Father and mother, what are you going to do with all this gold and silver?" When told that it would be taken to a goldsmith to make ornaments for her wedding, she said, "I have no desire to be married. I wish to go forth into homelessness." So she wanted to become a nun, that's what it said. The parents consented to the girl's wish and brought out cloth with which to prepare the monastic robe. When the girl asked the purpose of the cloth, they told her it was for her robe. She said, "I have a robe. It's not necessary to sew one. Take me to the Buddha, I beg you." This all happened during the Buddha's time, so Buddha can explain all of this, which is so nice. Imagine if you have a child who's born wrapped with clothes. When her parents had taken her to the enlightened one, she bowed at his feet and requested for going forth. When the Lord said, "Welcome," her hair fell away, and white robe which she wore became mendicant's robe of 5 parts. The girl was made a novice and placed under the tutelage of Ma Prajapati. See, Ma Prajapati was the Buddha's auntie, His aunt, also you can call her, a stepmother, his aunt, ex-biological aunt, and also really stepmother. It's almost like a mother, because she mothered her, because the Buddha's mother died a week after Buddha was born. So Prajapati really means she's the holy lady of the world. Praja means the whole subjects. Gautami is because he's born in the family Prajapati. Gautami, Prajapati, Maha Prajapati. Praja means subject. Pati means the owner of the subject. So she's the really highly revered. Due to her great diligence, in a short time she became an arhat. So Suchi became an arhat. She became an arhat. Bananda said to the enlightened one, "Lord, by reason of what form of virtue did this nun, born covered with a white cloth in a home of horror, so quickly become an arhat?" Because Ananda has seen so much, but he hasn't become arhat himself for all that time that he spent with the Buddha until after Buddha passed away, So he never asked, Lord, I'm still not becoming arhat. What's the reason? He was asking about everybody else. Ananda said to the Buddha, and then the Buddha said, "Ananda, in time long past, when the Buddha called virtue's refuge and his disciple passed through this world for the benefit of beings, all the people made great offerings. At that time, for the benefit of many, and that all might hear the Dharma, a certain monk went about explaining the giving of alms, so the benefit of making offerings. At that time, there was a beggar woman by the name of Daniksha, who, together with her husband, had only one single piece of cloth for their clothing. When the husband went out to beg, he put on the cloth, and the wife lay down and covered herself with grass. When the wife went out begging, it was she who put on the cloth, while the husband lay down and covered himself with grass. Upon a certain occasion, the exhorting monk came to the door of the couple's dwelling, and seeing the woman said, "O woman, go pay homage to the enlightened one, acquire merit." He then lauded the virtues of giving, censured the evil of greediness, and continued, "O woman, meet a Buddha in this world is difficult. To obtain a human body is even more difficult. Why do you not go pay homage to the enlightened one?" The woman said, "Young monk, remain here a moment. I shall go into the house and return." Entering the house, she said to her husband, "A monk has come to the door. He says that one should pay homage to the Buddha, hear the Dharma, and give gifts. In a former life, we were uncharitable, and that is the reason we are now beggars. In some way, we should make provision for the next life." The husband replied, "We should indeed give gifts, but since we are beggars, have nothing, what can we give?" The woman answered, "If it is true that because we formerly gave nothing and we are now beggars, if we give nothing now, what will be our fate in the next life? I shall give something, and you should be glad." The man knew that there was only one thing to give, but said, "If you have something to give, but we have nothing else to wear when we go out begging, and begging is only way we have of making a living." The woman said, "If we give the cloth and then die, what will be the loss? In this life we have nothing anyway, and that will be good fruits for the next life. I think that if we give the gift and die, we shall be fortunate." The husband was reluctant to this, but said, "Well, do whatever you wish." The woman quickly went out to the monk and said to him, "Monk, do not look at me. I shall give a gift." "Do not look at me," because she will go naked. The monk answered, "When one gives a gift, it must be given openly and give with two hands. If you do this, I shall bless you with a verse." The woman said, "I have only this cloth with which to cover my body, and that is to be my gift. How can you, a noble monk, look upon an evil, filthy body? I shall give it to you from within the house." She entered the house, removed the cloth, and handed it to the monk, who took the cloth, gave her his blessings, went to the Buddha. Buddha said the cloth was given by a woman. When the monk had offered the cloth to the Buddha, he had taken it into his hand. The assembly thought, "A king would never take such a dirty old rag into his hands." Knowing their thoughts, the Buddha said, "Never has there been a gift to the Sangha more pure than this." Thereupon the assembly was astonished. The king's wife, rejoicing greatly, removed her robes and jewels and sent them to the beggar woman. King also sent jewels to the beggars and commanded him and his wife to appear in the assembly. When the Buddha, the protector helper, had taught the supreme Dharma, many of those present were liberated. Then the Ananda said to the Buddha, "Ananda, this nun Suchi was at that time the beggar woman. Because she gave in great faith that single piece of cloth, she was born for 61 kalpas, wearing a cloth and endowed with possessions, and having requested from the Buddha the supreme Dharma and bliss of liberation, she has now met me and attained arhathood. Do you, they all therefore listen to Dharma, make efforts to give gifts." When the assembly had heard the words of the Buddha, they believed and rejoiced greatly. Yeah, so this very much says it's not the amount, not the quantity, not the thing, but the fact that you believe in the good merit to the recipient now, and even more merit in the future by giving something, even though it's the only thing you have. Because life is pretty useless if it doesn't do good deeds. So she therefore didn't mind, even if they have to die by giving it. But the merit of such a good dana is so enormous that she, by giving it, instead of losing the cloth, they were getting incredible gifts from the queen and everybody else. And that's really usually true. When you do something generous, acts, when you give for something, for some reason you have never shortage of what you need. It naturally will come from somewhere least expected. Not that you want looking for, but your whole goodness of giving it to someone, it makes you to believe in more than keeping. Keeping is not the purpose of getting. Purpose of getting is to give someone who needs it more than us to get it. What is the purpose of our getting? Is not to keep it. A lot of the foolish people does exact opposite. They work so hard like a donkey, around the clock, round the many 2 jobs, whatever, work so hard, enslave themselves as a material possession. The more they get, more they want, and in so doing, they become so enslaved to material possessions, and they become keeper of worry, competitiveness, anxiety, jealousy, arrogance, and all the wrong things comes from material possessions. The material possession without grasping and clinging doesn't have to be, The Tibetan word for material possession is nor. Nor means mistake, Most people who are foolish makes mistakes over things, and they lose people. They make so much a big mistake that's why in the West they call dirty money. If you are not careful, all the wrong things you're doing for the sake of money, and then you compete with your brother. You take your sister to court, and you fight over 2,000, but spend 20,000 just to prove that you have the right to keep it. But in the end, you never kept anything. You lost everything in the court battle. And so many foolish people are spending hours in the court battle in litigation. Incredible. They know just to get a letter written about that issue by the barristers costs you $2,000. It must be senseless. Why it has to be done that? But yet people are so mistaken, deluded, as if the wealth is going to make them powerful and happy. And that's why the Tibetan word for wealth is mistake. Nor. And Tibetan word for yaks are called nor, which also means wealth. So they say, how many yaks you have means how many mistakes you have. Because you have to tie the poor animal, you have to bind their legs when you're milking the female yaks. You wanted to I don't know, cut their hairs, or you throw stones at them, or you make so many bad karmas as you become possessor of animals. So when animals are wealth, yeah. Now, when your wealth is money, when your wealth is property, when your wealth is... I'm not saying every wealth is a mistake. Some people are master over the wealth. Then the wealth is not a mistake. But they become slave to the wealth. Then that's the mistake. And they become slave to the wealth. And Chogyal Pakpa, when he wrote to the Kublai Khan's nephew about wealth, he said there are 4 types of wealth, One that is your enemy, One that is your enemy. All your enemies made over the wealth. You make all the mistakes in relation to that. The one and only wealth that makes you friend is that you give to those who need, and then you really empower them to education or medication, or they want to do something. Then your wealth could have never done that good deeds anywhere else. So that's why we're talking about the merit of dana, merit of giving, and only few wise people do that. Most foolish people are even hiding their money from themselves. They don't even know where they put the money. Some put in Swiss bank, but but even that's a mistake. They fight over their brothers, they fight over their sisters, they hide the money from themselves. For what? Because money dirties your mind, you lose your mind, you lose your sensibility, but only if you have the grace to practice generosity. But if you look in a society, there's lots of people who give so much. In Australia, many of you probably are in Australia, New Zealand maybe. We have some New Zealand audience here. Australia and New Zealand is not much different. We get so much medicine from our Medicare. And we just have to swipe a card. We hardly have to pay very much. But most of our medicines are funded by thousands of philanthropists. Many people give so much for health, medicine, medical research, and they really are generous people. These monies are hard-earned money, but they have no hesitation to give to cancer research or this or that, and for medical purposes. Or you go to the places the medical research. You go to the big companies. How much money they put to those things? There are lots of generous people. We shouldn't think that complain that the world is full of miserly people. There are lots of good. Everything that you have and you are a gift of others. We were born empty-handed, and we brought nothing, And not that you can, except the lady with the cloth, I don't know how she brought her own clothes. Yeah. So there's a lot of teachings in that story. When you give, you live. If you're happy, it's because you've been generous recently. They say that. If you're miserable, it's because you've been miserly recently. Maybe in the past, and present as well. You're still miserly. You have things, but you never rejoice you have. You have more than things you need, but you still think you don't have this, you don't have that. Therefore, you're miserable. And that's the wise. Whether you want to choose the wise or whether you want to choose foolish thoughts. You can tell whether the person is wise or not. When a person is wise, he's really positive. He thanks everybody. He says nothing negative about other people, particularly third person. And he's so grateful. He's very positive. He's very generous. And you can see, even though things are going not so well, you can see from your point of view, but he never complains. This the thing, He sees those are the consequences of some past actions, he just tolerates them. See, that's the wisdom. That's the wise story, She never complained that we have nothing, we should keep this. We say, we have nothing, so we give them anyway, so what's the point of keeping? It's nothing is too little to give. It's a gift that excels all gifts, because the motivation why you give and who you give and so on is more important than thinking, I won't have anything left for myself. Most people are always thinking of worrying about their time, that they have a long future. You'll be dead very soon. What do you want to do? All of those things, gathering and collecting and hoarding and saving and so on. And having lots of sleepless night and tasteless food because you're so worried, so wronged by your over-concerned about mundane, filthy money. And this is the kind of teaching that we are pointed to by listening to the story of the Sutra of Wise and Foolish. So now we move to the next chapter. Tonight reading are short stories, but they are very, very long blessings. Short stories, but so succinct, you know. Chapter 20, slave woman sells her poverty. Sells her poverty to whom? To monk Mahakatyana. That says it all, doesn't it? She's slave, but she sells her poverty. At one time, the noble Mahakatyana is one of the very senior 12 disciples of the Buddha, was residing in the land of Appa. I don't know where that it is, somewhere in India. At that time, there was in the land a wealthy but avaricious and cruel householder who owned an old female slave. Because these old women did evil things, he gave her no clothing to cover her body, no food to eat, and constantly beat her. Unable to endure this suffering, the old slave decided to kill herself. Wearing a water jug, taking a water jug, she went to the water's edge and began to wail loudly. She went to fetch water, and then once she got there, she was wailing, you know. At that time, the monk Mahakatyana was passing by and heard her. He asked, "Old woman, why do you cry like this?" The old woman answered, "Your Reverence, I have grown old. I'm forced to do heavy labor. I'm not given food or clothing. I would be better if I died. That is why I'm wailing." Now, I'm sure some of us have cried at times when your situations aren't going your way, whether for your brother or whether you're home or whether for your tribe or whether for the group of people. When things aren't going very well, you feel helpless, you feel hopeless, and you cry, don't you? You cry for help, you know. In the West, you can dial numbers. You dial numbers. There's a lot of people on the other side of the phone sobbing and crying, and they're so desperate to talk anyone who will listen to you. Times have changed, but the people's suffering hasn't. People's suffering have stayed the same, if not worsened. We have many more things, but trouble has just doubled as much as the things we have. At that time, the monk Mahakatyana was, so I read that already. The monk said, "Would you like to sell your poverty?" What a good question. He says, "Do you want to sell your poverty?" So she was trying to find a buyer, buyer of her problems. Monk said, "Oh, do you want to sell your poverty?" That was her property. She only had a good poverty, so the poverty was her property, and the monk is happy to buy the property which is poverty, because monks is very expert poverty buyer, you know. Wise people choose poverty to property. Foolish people go after property and cannot stand poverty. In poverty, you really look for the truth. You know, if real property is truth, real poverty is property with no wisdom. So much property, but so much poverty at the same time. Most of people, you see that, incredible. So many opulent countries and suburbs and houses and families, but so much poverty at the same time. They have no time to acquire wisdom. They have no time to listen to sutras. They are so busy whisking them from here to there, changing clothes, making themselves appear something, attractive to some people, but completely poverty of purpose of what they're doing it for. This is what we are. And so, would you like to sell your poverty? The old woman answered, "Your Reverence, how can one sell poverty? Who would would buy it. so she didn't get the teaching. No, Mahakatayana said, poverty can be solved. It can be solved. There's a market for it. Instead, the price has gone up recently. I'm the prime collector of poverty. I'm the prime collector of poverty. You have met the right agent. Poverty can be solved. When he had said this 3 times, the old woman asked, he said 3 times. He said 3 times, poverty can be solved. Poverty can be solved. Poverty can be solved. Its price has gone up. Gone up. And if that is true, how can it be solved? So she says, if that is true, how can it be solved? And she's got many questions. Who will buy it? And where's the place? The monk said, all women, if you truly want to sell your poverty, I'll show you how. But you must do it as I tell you. The same story, like Kisagotami. Yes, we can revive your daughter. We can revive your daughter, yes. But you must do exactly what I said. So, see, it's amazing. It's because Mahakatayana attained Arhatship himself by hearing Buddha teach like that, This is what I've heard, thus I've heard, is what the Buddha, now they're able to teach the way to the others, yeah? When all women said that she would certainly do as the monk told her, he said, first of all, you must wash your hands. Then you must make a gift. Then you must make a gift. The old woman said, Your Reverence, I have nothing at all. I have nothing at all. How can I make a gift? Because everybody thinks gift must be things, Gifts, in Buddhism, gift of things is least of the 4 things you should give. Material gift is the least of the 4 things. And second is fearlessness, giving comfort to others, protection to their fear or anxiety that's probably more valuable than gift of money, And third is loving kindness. Fourth and best is dharma. So of course Katayana is here to teach her. You must wash your hands, then you must make a gift. Old man when say, Your Reverence, I have nothing at all. How can I make a gift? Even this water jug belongs to my mistress, and it is not mine. I have nothing. Yeah, and also people think that what we should give is ours. We have nothing. Even you think that these are in your possession, they're not yours. They're just passing through you or stuck with you. In worst case, they're stuck with you. They should be passing like a river, but you're holding on to them. That's the problem. They're not yours. They're somebody else's money. Somebody else has worked so hard, and you're giving this government pension. You think it's your money, don't you? It's coming from somebody else. And I have nothing. When the monk said, All women, fill your food bowl with water and offer to me. And he says, now you can just fill the water bowl with water and give it to me. I shall say our blessings. So this is always the whole tradition of people offering whatever they offer. They always say a prayer. Usually all the Dharma discourse given over a meal or over a small offering like that. The woman filled her bowl and with water and offered it. Then the monk took into his 2 hands, said a blessings, invoked the name of the Buddha, Buddha, he then exhorted the woman to pray and to think with firm faith of all Buddha's virtues. He then asked her if she had a place to live. All women said, I have no place to on my own, but sometimes I stay in the place where I grind grain, eat, and work. The monk said, you must strive hard to cut off all thoughts of resentment and suffering which are connected with evil deeds. Yeah. Because he knows she has to get rid of all those wealth. She has too much of those wealth of suffering, wealth of problem, wealth of anger, wealth of poor me. She has to disown all of those. Giving up those is the real. You must strive hard to cut off all the thoughts of resentment, the suffering which are connected with the evil deeds. At night, after you have slept outside, quietly open your mistress' door, go inside, spread clean grass in a corner, sit on it, think constantly of the Buddha and pray. Incredible. He just said, you just think of the Buddha and just sort of disconnect yourself from your poor me stories. This is very amazing teaching. Even the Buddha, even the Buddhist meditation is just that. Just sit still, think of the Buddha and how on every single thing that he's taught is so true. And I must disconnect myself from my resentment. I must think of not me as a poor me. I must think of not what he did wrong. These are really, really bad. I need to sell these properties. I have so much property of suffering. Even if you have lots of a lot of money, you wouldn't see them. Your mind is completely, jaundiced by this resentment and anger. So you have so much property, and yet you're complaining you don't have. You have to be willing to sell. You have to identify, list all the things you need to sell. It means get rid of. So unless you admit all the things you need to sell, I cannot buy them. So you need to list all the things you need to sell. I cannot buy what you don't admit you got to sell. You got to list all your resentment and anger and jealousy and sadness and bitterness and guilt and all of those thoughts connected with power. You got to acknowledge them. You know, to create like a list of the things that you are emotionally distracted and disturbed. You must identify all of those. Mm-hmm. And think constantly of the Buddha. It's just like teaching our meditation. But Katyayana was so skillful, he didn't even tell her you have to meditate. You just sit there and you just have to get rid of all the property. And then the property was to disconnect with the resentment and anger and bad thoughts about anyone and anything that you have been thinking, poor me, and all of that. And pray. Pray means, yes, I will not keep this wealth of suffering, property of suffering. It's like a story for Kadamba monks when he was meditating. And one friend of his monk come him. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm meditating on compassion." Then his friend said, "Oh, that's good that you're meditating compassion, but you should really do real Dharma practice." So he thought practicing compassion was the real Dharma practice, because he thought he was practicing compassion. His friend said, "It's okay, but it's better you practice the real Dharma." And then he was doing something else, and then his friend said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm practicing Dharma. You told me to practice Dharma." He said, "Yeah, but that's not really Dharma." So in the end, then he says, "What is real Dharma?" And his friend, "It's being patient is practicing Dharma." And then he's meditating on patience, so to speak. He comes back and he would try to tease him. "Don't tease me, I'm meditating." He still couldn't get it. But being patient, he should be patient. He's irritated by telling him. It's like that. Pointing. Teaching means pointing. You see, we cannot see what is really pointing at. The woman has so much property of suffering, full of suffering. Yet she's complaining. She's poor. But that's what Buddha says. Suffering must be understood, cause must be apprehended, and it must be stopped by following the way. Yeah. So here, Katyayana is teaching her to recognize the suffering. Recognizing the suffering is the resentment. The resentment is the property. The property doesn't give happiness anyway, particularly if it's a resentment. Quite a lot of people's material wealth is actually a property of their greed. That shows how greedy they have been. It doesn't show how generous they've been. They're always worried about saving for some things. They can't see how it could be given and shared for good purposes. And first they want to give, but the second they don't want to give. There's a huge negative karma wanting to give, not give. There's lots of people not fulfilling wishes because they said they'll give and they don't give. They give only a small portion. Everything has consequences that are similar to that. So Katyayana is here to point the lady that she doesn't have to get property, she has to sell the property, which is her anger and resentment. She has no poverty. She has poverty of knowledge and wisdom. And that's what he's coming to. Here, strangely, the word poverty and property rhymes. Good for the speaker. In English language, at least. So, the old woman then did as the monk had told her, and one night she died and she was reborn among the gods of 33. So she basically passed away by meditating on the Buddha and by getting rid of her property of hatred and resentment, all of that. So the following morning, when the mistress of the house woke and she saw the old slave had died in the house, she was infuriated and screamed, "Drag this old woman outside. She was never allowed in the house. How could she have crept in and died here?" Sound like some difficult madam. A grass rope was then tied to the old woman's legs and she was dragged to the burial ground. When the old woman was reborn among the gods, 500 goddesses had surrounded one of the gods and were playing games with him. Those of the gods with keen minds understood why all women had been reborn there, but the dull-witted ones did not. Even the old women, although experiencing great happiness, did not understand the reason for this. At that time, Shariputra was residing in the realm of gods of 33 realms. Shariputra was roaming around, maybe, because he can just have a little walk outside Shravasti, and all of a sudden he's the heaven of the 33 realms. He doesn't have to order an Uber or anything like that. He asked the old woman, "By reason of what virtues have you been born here?" When she said that she herself didn't know, he looked with a divine eye. Deva eye, understood the reason and made this known. Then he and 500 goddesses proceeded to the burial ground and made offerings of celestial flowers around the old woman's corpse. That great land was filled with the light of the gods, and all women's mistress and all the others were astonished. Going to the burial ground and seeing the host of goddesses honoring the old woman's corpse, they asked, "Oh goddesses, why do you honor this old woman's bones? While she was living, everyone hated her. Why do you do this now that she is dead?" Thereupon the goddesses explain in detail the reason why all women had been reborn among the gods. They then proceeded to where the noble Mahakatayana was, and when noble monk had taught them charity, precept, birth in higher states, and supreme dharma, they became freed from the defilements. Because they all, then Katayana told them all about the merit of getting rid of hatred, getting rid of anger, So one shouldn't be really worried about lack of material things. Even you have so many millions, so much property, but if you're still full of hatred and greediness and anger and resentment, you are mistaken. You're wronged by your own property of hate, property of resentment. And attain the pure eye of Dharma and return to their own Dharma realm. And the others, having heard the exposition of the Dharma, exposition of Dharma, attain fruits from the first up to the fourth, all had faith and rejoice. So this all happened amazingly during the time of the Buddha. So there was Buddha there to explain, there was Shariputra to explain, there was Mahakatayana, and they all three were involved. This story. they were clarifying everything. But these days, when your life's situation unfolds, nobody can tell you these things. Everybody is siding your anger, siding your hatred, siding your resentment, siding that you are wronged, and they stand up for you, but they actually make it many times multiplied, the wrongs and angers and hatred. This is what we degenerate world. Who you go to who will give you this advice? They will give you exactly opposite. Oh, you poor thing, you've been wronged, you've been mistreated, and we will take you somewhere and you will be compensated. People will do that. Let alone Shariputra, let alone Mahakatayana, let alone Buddha. You wouldn't even meet a fellow practitioner of Dharma. So Dharma practitioners so few. We say only barely 2%, 2.7% of Australian population are claimed as Buddhists, but they mostly are cultural Buddhists. They're all people who think they are born with parents who are Buddhists, but they really don't know Dharma. They just do cultural things. So those who really know Dharma and are able to give advice are so few, even if there may be a couple of hundred, but you cannot meet them, It's just like there may be 500 good carpenters, but you can't find a good one. It's just like that. It's very difficult to meet Sangha, Arhat particularly. So no wonder why sentient beings have so much property of suffering, when they should renounce all of that, but they do anything to get property, never mind the property of suffering. Of course, they don't know that they are gulping, molten, iron. But yet they are always willing to do any time, rise early, go to bed late, 2 jobs, try to save, try to invest, try to gain more things. They are constantly stressed by not having time to do this, to do that. They don't have time to meditate. They don't have time to study because they're just foolishly breaking their back like a camel, carrying this unnecessary load hither and thither. And they have no decency to know the value of life, how precariously impermanent things are, how mundane material wealth causes a lot of suffering and competitiveness, jealousy, envy, greediness. They don't know that. So we are in a desert of Dharma. It's very difficult to find Dharma advice. Another short story, now the 21st chapter, another short story. It's called Golden God. Thus I've heard at one time the enlightened one was residing in the city of Sravasti in Jetavana Monastery in Anathapindika's park. That's the same place. At that time there was in that country a wealthy householder who owned jewels, treasures, great possessions. He had married a woman of his own caste, and a son had been born to him who was of golden color. Wow. At that time of the birth of soothsayer had been called, who examined the child was named him Golden God. When the boy was born, there appeared in the house a well which was 8 cubits across, 8 cubits deep, and when the water was drawn from it, whatever one wished it for appeared: food, clothing, drink, gold, silver, or wish-fulfilling gems. Unbelievable story. When the child grew up, he became learned in the sciences of the householder, thinking that it was time for him to marry, search for a girl who was of the same color and as lovely as the boy. At that time there lived in the land of Champaka a wealthy householder who had a daughter named Golden Light, who was of the exceptional beauty, form, and complexion, in whose house a magic well had appeared where she was born. This is happening, same place. Parents of this girl were seeking a husband for her who would be of the same golden color and as lovely as she. When they heard of the householder of the golden sun, they brought her to Sravasti and married her to the boy. Almost like married, mad in the heaven, they call it. Golden God invited Buddha and the Sangha to his home and honored them, and when the Lord has taught the Supreme Dharma, the youth, his wife, his parents are liberated from the grievous sins that has accumulated for 200,000 kalpas, and their minds became purified and they became stream winners. That's why in the Buddhist culture these days, when some holy monks or realized masters or famous teachers visit in town, they all throng to give a meal, or they want to be party to offer whatever clothes, the robes or food, or they never have to do anything what we have to do in the modern world, to have to advertise, making other people to book and all of that. They don't have to do that. They just have almost like a rush of people wanting to sponsor this, sponsor that. They never have to charge fees for anyone, because every other person is more than happy to offer the food, offer the whatever it was the case. So that's what we're talking about, where such culture existed. Yeah, Golden God was invited the Buddha and Sangha to his home, honor them, and the Lord, the Supreme Buddha youth, and his parents were liberated from the grievous sins that had accumulated for 2,000 kalpas, and their minds became purified. They became stream winners. So that talks about the merit of not only giving, but merit of the field of giving. The merit of field of giving, who is realized, who are arhats, not just one or two, but great many numbers. Of course, the merit of the field of the objects are so worthy of receiving gifts, then the merit thing that offered to such worthy objects of offering multiplies many times. And then the merit of not just the material they're offering, the merit of the faith of the offerers. The merit of faith of the offerers are more important than the merit of the quantity of material of the object they offer. So there's a lot of teaching there, a lot of wisdom in that. The Golden God and Golden Light asked their parents permission to join the Sangha. And when this had been given, they went to the Buddha, bowed their heads and its feet, joined their palms in reverence, and sought the Lord to compassionately admit them in the order. When the Buddha said, "Welcome," their hairs dropped away, and they were clad in the red robes. Golden God became a monk in the Buddha Sangha, and Golden Light resided as a nun with the Mahaprajapati. So Mahaprajapati, that's Buddha's incredible stepmother. Within a short time, both became arhats, endowed with 3 knowledges, 6 supernatural powers, 8 deliverance, and all the blessings. Thereupon noble Ananda said to the Buddha, Lord, the monk golden god and the nun golden light, because of what previous merit did 2 well-wishing appear when they were born, wishing wells that gave everyone whatever they desired. What was the reason for this? Ananda is always collecting this data. He's busy collecting everybody's information. Buddha said, Ananda, in times past 61 kalpas ago, when the Buddha Vipashian had come to the world and taught the Dharma and had attained final nirvana, monks who follow his teaching went through all the cities for the benefit of beings. At that time, there was a wealthy prince of upper caste who gave his wealth to the monks for food and robes. There was also a man and his wife at the time who were beggars. This couple thought, when our parents were alive and we had jewels and great property and wealth, we never met the Sangha. Now that we have been reduced to poverty and are beggar, Sangha of holy men has come to aid all beings. All the princes and wealthy people are offering necessities, and we have nothing to give. If in this life we cannot make an offering, what shall we be? What shall we be in the next lifetime? We do not know. The wife said, Go and search in your parents' treasure home. Perhaps you will find some small things there. If you do, we can make an offering to the Sangha. The beggar went there, dug in the earth, found a golden coin, buying a new paint pitcher. They filled it with the water, dropped with gold coins into it, and covering the pitcher with a mirror which belonged to the wife, offered this to the Sangha. The offering was accepted, and some of the monks used the pitcher to carry water. Some used it to wash their hands, some to wash their begging bowls. When the beggar couple saw this, they rejoiced greatly and returned home. Not long thereafter they died and were reborn in the gods of the 33. Ananda, these 2 who are now called Golden God and Golden Light were the beggar couple who filled the pitcher with water and offered with gold coin in the mirror. Through the power of that offering, they have been born beautiful and shining with gold and 61 kalpas. Because at that time they performed a very small act of virtue with a mind of great firm faith, they have now reached the end of samsara and have become arhats. This Ananda is the fruit of virtue, and one should persevere in it. By giving a tiny gift, that beggar woman became endowed with an accumulation of virtue that is beyond conception. When Ananda and the great assembly heard the word of the Buddha, they believed. They then understood concerning the accumulation of virtue of liberality, had complete faith, and rejoiced. So that's another story of the benefit of giving. It's not the quantity or not the thing, that the virtue of who you give to, and when you have a good couple or a good partner together, these partners together are not sort of accidental, So good deeds were done together in the past, and good deeds can be done even now. So therefore, we must think that our set of circumstances are not sort of accident, not by chance. Everything has causes and conditions. There was long time ago we labored hard to have a friend, to have a person who assists you to be where they are, and they are no ordinary accidents. So therefore, we must rejoice the present sets of circumstances and try to build on that, no matter how many difficulties are set on you, but they shouldn't daunt you. But we should learn to practice generosity. Whoever needs it. Of course, here the story always goes around Sanghas and Buddhas, because those were the fortunate time that people could meet Buddha in Shravasti. But this didn't happen in Calcutta, because there was no Calcutta, This happened in Shravasti. So those days, when people to be born as a human being is very rare. To be born as a human being as a Buddha is even rarer. To be born during a Buddha and he's alive is even rarer. And so these days we talk about very fortunate that we are born in a time when Buddha came. But how do you know Buddha came and he taught if you don't search, if you don't look for the teachings? So that's why we may be living in the very frontiers of the Dharma, because we live in very, very decadent, materialistic, when we say developed countries, developed country means really, really poverty countries. They're only developed materially, but they're spiritually more poverty-stricken. And people think they're intelligent. They're living in droves, their churches and their faith, their traditions. They think they are so successful materially, and they think they couldn't be bothered and cannot believe in good more than this naked eye can see, because they're so materialistic. There's a lot of nihilists. Lots of nihilists are born these days. And eternalists are few too. But those who find the extremity of a nihilist and eternalist are even fewer. Buddhists are supposed to be middle way practitioners. Yeah, neither deny the non-existence of life or karma, nor no fatalistically following kind of eternalist God. They look into the do's and don'ts in your own thoughts and your own words, your own deeds, so that even small acts of generosity, you shouldn't think that I have nothing to give. You know, the story about what we read so far tonight is not they were so wealthy they have so much to give. They had nothing to give. But all they have to give is not so much what other needs, but what one has to get rid of. You know. A lot of time we might be motivated to give something because this might help other people, but actually helps us many more times than the temporal benefit the recipient might have. You know, you might enable a person to have an operation by giving a couple $1,000, but the merit of that will give you many times the much more than what you think you're helping somebody. This is the kind of thing we don't see. We don't see that far because we're so mean and we are so poverty. We are so destitute of the wisdom and compassion and penetration. But by listening to the Blessed Sutra of Wise and Foolish, you know, and we might switch our mind to think and live differently, and starting to really sit and meditate on the Buddha, you know. And so don't ever get depressed or sad about things, and just sit somewhere and just think of the qualities and how true the teachings of the Buddha is, and remember the qualities of the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, and just stay present in that, and that will rob all your property of suffering, the resentment, anger, the doubt, the fear, all of those things. You don't need to lose any weight. You don't need to lose any of that. You have to lose hatred. Even if you lose 6 kilos doing this exercise, so what? Nothing. It's wood. You will put it on another kind of weight again. You have to lose hatred. You have to lose resentment. You have to lose guilt and anger and jealousy and pride and arrogance and self-righteousness. If you don't lose them, then no matter how many exercises you do, push-ups you do, you even might think you lost lots of kilos, but you haven't lost anything. You'll put it back on you, no problem, no time. This is the Sutra of Wise and Foolish we are appointed to think about. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for your attention. We'll stop here reading and listening, but deeply listening doesn't stop, does it? Because these teachings are so poignant and so true and so sustaining and so quenching your thirst. You know, you couldn't drink any drink that has this much ability to quench your thirst. And you couldn't find anything than this kind of wisdom that you will always find relevant to apply in every given situation. So with the merit of listening and talking and then believing in them even more. Believing in them not just tonight or duration of listening, but try to listen always, pay heedfully to these teachings, and then make our thoughts and our visual, our sense doors much more sensibly guarded by these kind of teachings and pointings that these teachings are designed for. So with this, we'll dedicate the merit. Like even the gift, for the food is given, but still they make it prayer for its enormous increasement of merit for many other causes. So it's very clearly spelled out in these words of dedication and merits prayer. Whatever merit I have, may have begun levels to the Mahayana courage, manjuj new wood as a man tabara de la following of the example, I should get all the excellent body, Taba, where no yet where has been born, may drink. Really without generation. Thank you, everyone.